if a bill or resolution were to come before us which affected change in the collective bargaining rules as we know them, say, for instance, the calculation of pension and what would be in those things, given the call of the governor as been read to us, would you say that that would be properly before this General Assembly on this day?
No, because I think what we have actually that's coming before us is a bill that I think reflects what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the immediate need for balancing the budget. And I believe a number of these other items are not necessarily appropriately before us.
We are here because of the governor's call. The governor has called us into special session today. And in preparation and in anticipation of that, as the majority leader indicated, he gave us a draft bill that he was hopeful that we would pass. Contained within that draft bill are various provisions that affect collective bargaining, pensions, etc. And what I'm just hearing now is the governor's own draft bill would not be properly allowed under the governor's call, at least as interpreted by the majority leader. And that is bewildering to me, that the governor would take the time to call us into special session, his call, outline why he wants us here, propose to us what he wants us to do here, and we are now learning that what he wants us to do here would not be allowed under what he called us here to do. Did I get that correct through you, Mr. Speaker?
Maybe I should just clarify. It's not so much that it's hard for me at this point to comment on what is and is not appropriately before us, because we don't have that bill that you're referring to in front of us for discussion. I think it's somewhat of a hypothetical as to what could potentially qualify as being acceptable for consideration under the call. And I think I think I can answer that question more thoroughly if we actually have a bill in front of it, legislation actually in front of us that we can refer to as to whether or not that's appropriately within the call of the governor.
These rules lay out how we will conduct ourselves today. And in doing so, in fact, every individual legislator has the right to draft amendments to whatever bill is eventually before us. In doing so, I presume we all want to live within the rules. So I guess my question started off to be that if somebody wanted to draft an amendment or put forth an amendment for this chamber to consider, and that amendment involved or was related to collective bargaining provisions, such as how one calculates a pension, etc., given the specific call of the governor's calling us into special session, would that be appropriate? And I'm hopeful that it's not a case that, well, we'll see depending on what comes before us. We need to have, as a General Assembly and individual representatives, a general idea of what we might be able to do today. So I guess I'm asking for clarification. If such an amendment, or such a bill for that matter, were put before us that dealt specifically with collective bargaining issues such as pension calculation, would that bill be properly before us and able for debate and consideration and vote in this chamber on this day, given the governor's call?
With all, Mr. Speaker, and again, with all due respect to the minority leader, I understand the question you're asking, but I'm not sure I can answer it. Because without the legislation or the amendments in front of us, it's hard to know. It's hard to make a sweeping statement that this subject, this subject, this subject, this subject can all be within the scope of the governor's call. I think it's the kind of thing that we need to know and have something before us before we can make that determination. Everything obviously has to be within the governor's call, and it's up to us to determine what is properly within that call. But without having something specifically before us, it's hard to make a hypothetical statement that would have other sweeping impacts, I think, at this point, without having something concrete in front of us.